Comeback is the theme of today's video, guys. So this is a comeback video in many senses of the word. In the first sense, this is my first YouTube video in well over 6 months. Apologies for my absence, guys. I've been busy with training, with life, with work. All of the usual cliches apply, but as the age-old saying goes, sometimes if you don't have anything good to say, then sometimes it's best not to say anything. Simply put, I didn't feel that I had content valuable enough to share with you or any lessons that were worth sharing, and I didn't want my content to start to become watered down as it would do if I started to chase ever-changing algorithms and the like. This channel has always been a place where I share my results with you through the experiences from my own training, the clients that I coach, whether that be one-to-one or in group settings. I always like this to be a platform where you can learn from my own experiences, and I just share the things that I uncover en route, stuff that ultimately helps you guys become better athletes, better thinkers, better movers, and better people in general. And with that said, finally, I can reveal that I've got just the video for you today because we are going to cover my comeback from injury. And rather than me waffling on about all the things that I did and everything to do with the injury in terms of what happened to me, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go over 10 rules for preventing injury in the first place. Some of them are also going to tie into actually handling injuries if you do find yourself in a similar position to me. But this is essentially your rule book for training bulletproof long-term. In other words, avoiding all the mistakes I made that, believe it or not, even if you're fighting fit right now, you could be making these mistakes without knowing. And just to quickly touch upon what my injury actually was, it was a long head of the bicep tendinopathy. So the long head of the bicep tendon became overworked and overused and inflamed as a result of an underactive infraspinatus and general weak upper back and a faulty recruitment pattern when I was doing most calisthenics movements. In other words, I was using my arms and chest more than I was my back. This went on for 2 years. I didn't know what it was for quite some time. It resulted in asymmetrical movements. It resulted in clunky muscle ups. It resulted in the loss of so many skills that I once had that felt very, very easy, becoming difficult, and many of them actually becoming impossible. So I lost lots and lots of skills throughout this period. A lot of this was worsened by the fact that I was always working in the industry, so I'm constantly in and around the same stuff all the time. So although your body is suffering, your brain ends up suffering, and the two feed each other, and it ends up becoming a bit of a negative feedback loop. And with that out of the way, I'm pleased to say that over the last 3 months, I've made more upper body progress than I probably have in the last 3 years. No exaggeration at all. I finally feel like I'm on an upward trajectory again, and when I put hard work into a movement, the movement starts to pay off, and I'm gradually seeing progressive overload and improvement, which was literally an alien concept to me for the longest time. And this is going to segue us really nicely, guys, into the 10 rules to stop you being injured just like I was. And these rules are not just for that. These rules will help you train better and learn from a wise old man who's been through a humbling journey's mistakes. So get yourself comfy and let's do another detailed straight talking fitness video. So in at number 1, the most pivotal thing to do that I never did when I started my training journey is literally starting off with a balanced program. And what I mean by that is that you're not following something that you've made up, or you're not just doing all the movements that you like. Like, for example, for me, I did lots of pull-ups and dips. I also did back squats and deadlifts. I did bench press and rows. There's a balanced program, but where is the vertical pushing? Where is the rotator cuff work? Where is the scapular stabilization? Where is the weak points work? In all honesty, I just didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is that I was hungry. I wanted to train. If I worked hard, I'd get progress. And I did see progress. Of course I did. And you'd see progress too, but only to a point. And in that newbie phase, say the first 3 to 6 months of training, that's when you're at most vulnerable to picking up bad movement patterns that are very, very hard to undo down the line. Whereas if I could look back at my old self now and kind of program for myself, I would have had me working on thoracic mobility right from the get-go. I would have strengthened the rotator cuff. I would have done a lot of upper back work. I would have been making sure I was working overhead. And I would have really dialed in my form on pull-ups and dips with lots of scapular activation so that I'm building the right movement patterns down the line so that you don't ingrain bad movement patterns that create overuse injuries. So rule number 2, and that is never thinking you're above basic variations or even preparatory work, no matter how good you get. This is a big mistake I made. Once you unlock muscle ups for reps, you only ever train muscle ups. Once you unlock full front lever, you're constantly trying to full front lever. This will sound so obvious to those of you that are in the know and those of you that are experienced, but essentially the ego is the devil on your shoulder. and it likes to constantly whisper in your ear telling you that you can only make progress and you're only doing something worthwhile when you're doing the full version of the movement. Of course, in reality, this is nonsense. Even in my own coaching now, I try and tell everybody to go back one level below where they think they are and train most of the time at that level, and then you know that you're absolutely bulletproof before you go to the next progression. Because let's face it, it's skipping progressions and training hard progressions too often that creates the overuse injuries, the CNS wear and tear and fatigue builds up, and you just can't sustain that long term. And that's when you start to get joint issues, and then they just rear their ugly head, and before you know it, it's too late and you're sidelined for a while. On to number 3 now, and that is tied quite neatly in with the last two, and that is training supplementary work. As much as you train the skills directly, this is the idea that you can still make progress in the more integrated compound movements without always hitting the compound movements. This can be simple things like working movements that are variations of the muscles involved. For example, you could do a dumbbell planche press, you could do a Van Gelder front lever pull, you could even do a cable pull down. You can even do what I've been doing lately in my own training, which is using a cable drill to isolate the bar muscle up transition, just to strengthen certain weak points. This is really, really useful because it actually lowers the stress on your central nervous system and helps really condition the muscles to the movement, which is a bit of a piggyback off the last point I made. I never did anything like that. I would walk in the gym and I needed to go kind of 90 to 100% effort, which would mean if I'm capable of, say, 5 reps with 10 kilo ring muscle ups, I would need to work in or around that zone to feel like I was getting anything out of it, simply because my ego, maybe the company I kept, forced me into that mindset. But as we've established, that mindset was so wrong, and there is no longevity associated with that mindset, as I now know. So rule number 4 is the last in this little mini section, and this one again ties nicely into the previous 3, and this one is breaking down movements into their individual components. So training things like top paused pull-ups or Frenchy pull-ups, adding pauses into the bottom, breaking the movement down into sections. A big mistake that I made, particularly with things like muscle ups, was relying on pure power from the bottom. Where I'm blessed with quite a fast, explosive and powerful pull, I've never really needed to grind through the transition, nor have I ever really needed to kind of have a good top position or a good lock-off position when it comes to the pull-up, because I can just use sheer force from the bottom to get me to the same place. But this was a major mistake, because one of the key things in my injury that I realized is that I had zero strength in the shortened ranges of pull-ups and rows. That just meant that I could barely even hold my chest against the rings, even on, say, a 45-degree body angle on a ring row. And I certainly couldn't hold the rings against my chest or my chest to the bar in a pull-up or chin-up top hold, not even close. So this was a massive area of weakness. And the main reason is that over my entire training career, there was little to no phases where I've even done that. It's always just been the full movement in its most basic and pure form. But when you look at what some of the other successful people are doing, like my good friend Lee Wade Turner, if you look at the way he coaches a lot of his athletes and trains himself, he has done loads of different broken down sections. So he'll have his guys doing ring transitions, he'll combine the transition in with other things. It won't just be the full rep. Same thing, there'll be isometrics with the forehead on the bar in a pull-up, there'll be isometrics in the active hang, and isometrics with the chin pulled nicely above the bar. And what this does, it just bulletproofs you through the entire range and leaves nothing on the table in terms of weak points where you can basically get exposed to forces and positions that ultimately you're not trained to be able to do. Number 5 is not enough training variety. Now, people are going to hear that and think, wow, I've got the green light to go out there and just screw around doing everything new, every single week, something completely new. Don't get this misinterpreted. It's not as extreme as it sounds. Not enough training variety just simply means you're doing the same movement patterns week in, week out. Same grip, same sets and reps, same intensity, etc. Not enough variety in the smart sense is exactly as the legendary Matt Wenning says. It is just rotating grips or rotating exercises that are very similar over, say, a 4-week cycle or even 6-week cycle, where you cleverly select different variations each time you train, so that you're not just constantly doing straight bar chin up week in, week out, or straight bar muscle up. It could be as simple as straight bar chin up 1 week. It could be ring chin up the week after. It could be straight bar pull up the week after that. Then you could go neutral grip parallel bar chin up for the 4th week, and then rinse and repeat. And if you keep working that 4-week cycle, you'll actually notice that all 4 of those lifts go up quicker than they would if you kept trying to hammer just one of them over 4 to 6 weeks. The chances of burnout and overuse would become much, much higher. The other benefit of rotating the grips and the different styles and the hand positions that you use is that you are basically getting good at everything all at once. So you're raising all of these qualities up at once, rather than just building one and then leaving all the others untrained and having to develop them while the other one detrains. You're kind of just doing more of a well-rounded approach, which is essentially what a GPP phase done properly is. General physical preparation done right will have you bulletproofed across the board. But this variation is super useful in not getting overuse injuries. You won't get so much nagging elbow pain, and overall you'll just feel better. Rules number 6 and onwards are going to be pertaining to those of you that are actually injured, or you suspect you have a developing injury, or you're getting little niggles or areas that are starting to hurt that you're a little bit concerned about. The first thing to do in this situation is to seek professional help as soon as possible. Even if you think it's not that serious, sometimes just getting a second opinion and getting on top of things while it's still manageable will save you so much time down the road. That's the biggest mistake I made when I did it, is that I thought I was going to be such a great coach if I figured this out myself, and how cool would I be to overcome all the odds, when in reality I was just constantly spinning my wheels going forwards and backwards because I wasn't treating the issue. I did somewhat figure out the fix myself, but because I wasn't treating the actual bicep tendon itself, all I was doing was constantly spinning my wheels. So when I'd reintroduce movements that were previously offensive because the tendon wasn't treated, I would still get the same irritated symptoms. So don't do what I did. Value your time. Your time is precious. Go and see a professional and seek a second opinion. And before you know it, you should be well on your road to recovery once again. Rule number 7 now, and this is your rehab is your religion. So what this means is physios are not magicians. They're not going to wave a magic wand, touch you, do a couple of little manipulations or adjustments, maybe a little bit of dry needling, and then you're good to go out and bang out 10 muscle ups again if you're struggling to do 3 now with pain. The physio is there to diagnose you. The physio is there to say what you need to work on. It's actually the boring, mundane rehab exercises that are cleverly and intelligently structured that are going to lift you back up and slowly recondition you to be able to do what you used to be able to do. And in my case now, I genuinely feel like I can actually do more than I used to be able to do because I've addressed those weak links. In my own rehab journey, I actually got to the point where, and even now, I enjoy the progressive overload side of the movements I'm doing. So even though they might be banded exercises, they might be ultra specific, I still try and apply a progressive overload principle to it. So I try to grab further down the band. I try to add reps where I can. I try to move my body angle lower if it's a body weight exercise that I'm doing, any of the above. And I try to treat this with the same kind of respect I would treat the old big moves from back in the day that I thought were cool and were going to get me Instagram likes. If anything, I would say I treat these with even more concentration. I'm literally a man possessed. Irrespective of where I am, I will do the rehab exercises. I was recently on an amazing trip to Morocco, and despite all the fun going around me by the poolside and the sun and the volleyball, there were periods where I had my music in, I had my bands attached to the beams, and I was just a man possessed doing my rehab. I just did this because I knew if I started to let it slip, I could fall back to where I was, and the pain of the idea of falling back to where I was strong enough to make me just not want to go anywhere near it. So I kept the momentum going no matter what, and you must do the same. You have to treat your rehab almost like your life depends on it for maximum results. I've had friends that haven't done that, and they are complaining about a sort of a subpar recovery period where they don't feel like they're getting the results they want, but they're the first to admit that they've not been following the rehab. So go figure. Really, if that's you, you've only got yourself to blame. And rule number 8 is that the setbacks are temporary. So in your rehabilitation journey, there are going to be moments where you think you are better than you are. You could get a little bit carried away, and then you're obviously going to get brought back down to earth because you're going to get the pain will be reoccurring, and you're going to do movements that don't feel nice that you expected to feel better. And this can be quite dejecting because you think, am I ever going to get back to a decent standard? But what you need to realize is the process is not linear. It will always go a little bit up and down and a little bit forward and backwards, but the bigger picture is the most important one. And across the bigger picture, as the months roll by, which they will regardless, so you may as well just trust the process, you will be unrecognizable if you just carry on doing what you should do, whether you feel like it or not. This is crucial. But if you feel any setbacks, as I said, try to not let the emotions overwhelm you. Just do what you're supposed to do and dream of a bigger and better day, because that bigger and better day will come. So in at number 9, we have seeing yourself as still injured even when you're not, which is very fitting at the moment because I am officially signed off from the physio, which you could say that I'm cured. I'm doing a video trying to almost act like an expert here, but believe you me, my feet are kept firmly on the ground. I am humble, and I know I'm not perfect because I can still feel sort of irritation if I do too many offensive exercises on that left elbow. I know it's not perfect, and I'm still doing the rehabilitation exercises 2 to 3 times a week, even though I've been told that I'm basically out of the woods and only to go back to the physio if I need them. I still treat myself like I need the exercises because I still get relief whenever I do them. I always feel like I'm getting better despite doing them longer than I've been told to. And this humbling mindset, basically just taking a slice of humble pie, isn't lost on anyone. If you apply that mindset, it will stop you getting too ahead of yourself, and keeping your feet firmly on the ground is always a safe place to be. 10 is a slightly biased, almost shameless plug, but this is not using some kind of ATG training in your general training, athletic Drew route training, which is basically a brainchild of the knees over toes guy. Obviously, he's done great things when it comes to rehabilitating people's knees, helping out people's lower back, their hips, etc. But he has his entire system based around bulletproofing, which is essentially strengthening all the little intricate ranges that often get injured or cause injuries because they are weak and they don't stabilize the area like they should. So the ATG system, if you look into that and peel the layers back and get good at some of those exercises, I am convinced that there is just almost no way you could get injured, whether you're a calisthenics athlete, whether you play a sport, whether you're just a recreational trainee. It really doesn't matter. They're suitable whether you're old, young, or anywhere in between. These exercises are absolute gold. Even though I'm teaching them now, so I suppose I'm a little bit biased, but since I've started adapting more of these exercises into my training, I'm feeling like I'm moving better and better and better. And I look back to the days of the old me, sort of almost 10 years ago now, where I first picked up a barbell, first tried a pull-up or a dip. And I think if I was doing some of these exercises alongside that development, there's just no way it could go wrong. There is just no way on earth that I could have ended up in the position that I was in. So they really would bulletproof you. So yeah, definitely look into some of the ATG training, even if you just apply the odd exercise here and there, even if you just do some rotator cuff work from the system, even if you decide that you're going to train, I don't know, ATG split squats as a way as bulletproofing your knees or developing your hip flexibility. Just use some of that system and fit it in to what is useful for you and your goals. And I promise you, you won't look back. And there we have it. 10 rules to avoid injury or to cope with an injury if you have one in the first place. If you follow these and you use this as your actual rule book and guidebook, you should never find yourself in the position that I found myself in. These are essentially 10 things I wish I could have shown myself right at the start of my journey, or I could have someone implant it into my brain. But sometimes I guess there's no teacher quite like experience, but use my experience positively and use it to help you. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I really want to get back on the ball here and produce more videos for you over the coming months and get the momentum back up to speed. On that note, I have a nice little juicy update on the one-arm chin-up for you. And I also have a video coming out on the Nordic curl. So yeah, click the subscribe button just so that you don't miss that. Turn the notifications on so that when I post a video, you'll be the first to know. I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.